Florida retirement. Two words that used to mean possibility, now they just mean panic. Because somewhere between the beach condo fever dreams and the insurance company nightmares, we convinced ourselves the whole state became unaffordable. Miami's drowning in million-dollar teardowns, Tampa's squeezing out anyone on a fixed income, and don't even mention what's happening along the coast with flood insurance adding $600 a month to your mortgage. But here's what the real estate industrial complex doesn't want you figuring out. Florida isn't expensive. The coast is expensive. 50 miles inland? That's a different financial universe. We're talking towns where the median home price dropped to $180,000 last year. Places where your property taxes run $1,300 annually instead of $5,000. Counties where the cost of living scores 9% below the national average, while you're still cashing Social Security checks tax-free. This isn't about compromising, it's about knowing where to look. Because Florida still has 15 towns where you can buy acreage, live the farmhouse life, and keep your retirement fund intact. Most retirees never hear about them because they're busy getting fleeced on the coast. Sebring. Sebring sits in Highlands County, dead center in Florida's interior ridge, and the numbers here are legitimately wild. The median sale price hit $180,000 in September last year. That price dropped 22.7% year over year, which tells you this isn't some bidding war market where cash buyers from New York are snapping up everything. This is a buyer's paradise where sellers are motivated and properties sit. The average home value runs $239,000. You want a fixer project on acreage? You're in the sub $200,000 zone. Move in ready with land? Still under $250,000. Sebring consistently ranks in the lowest 15% of Florida's cost of living scores. That's real, day-to-day affordability. Groceries, gas, utilities, all of it cheaper than 85% of the state. The town leans into agritourism, local farms, roadside stands, established 55-plus communities. But the real draw is space. You're not stacked on top of people. You buy a house with 3 acres, you do what you want with 3 acres. Healthcare runs through regional centers, nothing cutting edge on site, but that's the trade-off for paying $180,000 instead of $480,000. Okeechobee. Okeechobee County sits near that massive lake, and the Florida Price Level Index scores this place at 93.86. It costs about 6% less to live here than the Florida median, which already undersells how cheap it feels compared to the coast. Property taxes use millage rates, tax per $1,000 of assessed value. Okeechobee County's base millage is 7.9, creating a total of 13.24 in unincorporated areas. But inside city limits? That jumps to 19.93. Same county, 40% higher tax rate. The strategy is obvious. Search unincorporated county parcels. You get the same agricultural vibe, same low costs, and you cut your annual tax bill by 1/3. The land carries that working ranch aesthetic. Big lots, older homes, room to spread out. Your nearest neighbor is a 1/4 mile away and you both like it that way. Brooksville. Brooksville sits 50 miles north of Tampa in Hernando County, and this is where the affordability model shifts. You're not chasing the absolute lowest prices. You're optimizing for proximity to world-class healthcare without paying Tampa prices. The town maintains small-town infrastructure, local shops, slower pace, actual parking spots. But the real story is medical access. Brooksville hosts Tampa General Hospital Brooksville and HCA Florida Oak Hill Hospital. Oak Hill pulled down the America's 250 Best Hospitals Award. That's top-tier care. This is the rural adjacent model. You pay slightly more upfront, but you eliminate the single biggest retirement risk, being 90 minutes from an emergency room when something goes wrong. Heart attack, stroke, sudden complications. You're 10 minutes from award-winning cardiac care. Insurance costs drop too. You're far enough inland to dodge coastal flood premiums, but close enough to Tampa's infrastructure to keep rates reasonable. Inverness. Inverness operates in Citrus County with a Florida Price Level Index of 91.52. Local expenses run about 8.5% below the state median. That state median is already dragged up by Miami and Tampa, so you're really looking at costs running 8% below the national average. Crime rates track 20 to 30% below state averages. Low crime means lower insurance premiums and the ability to actually enjoy your land without constant security theater. Recreation centers on the Tsala-Apopka chain of lakes. Kayaking, fishing, quiet water access without beach crowds. Healthcare flows through regional networks with Advent Health Ocala handling serious cases. The farmhouse properties skew toward older builds on larger lots. Ranch-style layouts from the 70s and 80s, often on 1 to 3 acres. That's the target, retirees who want elbow room and are willing to update a kitchen in exchange for cutting housing costs in half. Dade City. Dade City delivers one of those rare combinations, measurably cheap plus Tampa-adjacent access. Cost of living runs 15% below the national average. Median home price sits at $267,365. The property tax rate runs 1.05% compared to the state's 0.80%, but you're applying that to a $267,000 value instead of $450,000. The median annual tax bill hits $1,545. That's $128 a month in property tax. Healthcare access leverages the BayCare network spanning Tampa Bay and Central Florida. That's not one hospital, that's a whole system. You get preventative care locally, but if something serious hits, you're plugged into Tampa's full medical infrastructure without paying Tampa prices. The town maintains that "we remember when this was all Orange Groves" vibe. And you're close enough to Tampa that if you need something, a specialist, an airport, it's a 40-minute drive, not a day trip. Lake City. Lake City anchors Columbia County up in North Florida. Average home value runs $261,229. Median sale price hits $227,000. The market showed wild appreciation. Prices jumped 22.7% year over year, but you're still buying in the low to mid $200,000 range. Columbia County's Florida Price Level Index scores 94.51. The county-only millage rate is 7.815, creating a total of 13.50 when you add school districts and water management. That's competitive, especially on a $227,000 purchase. Lake City runs a growers and makers market every second and fourth Saturday. The town sits at a geographic crossroads. Interstate 75 cuts right through. You're rural but not trapped. Jacksonville's an hour east. Gainesville is close for university culture or UF health resources. The housing stock blends small-town homes with rural acreage properties on 2 or 3 acres. Bartow. Bartow sits in Polk County where the acreage game gets serious. 5-acre parcels start around $195,000 for raw land. Improved farmhouse-style properties on similar acreage run around $759,000. That massive range accommodates both budget land bankers and retirees ready to write a check for the finished product. Healthcare access is the selling point. Bartow Regional Medical Center sits about 10 miles out, and you're positioned between Lakeland and Winter Haven, both with full hospital networks. You're not sacrificing medical security to get acreage. The town keeps that classic courthouse square charm, historic downtown, local businesses that aren't chains. But you're close enough to the Lakeland-Winter Haven corridor that you're not rationing trips to civilization. Rural aesthetics with suburban convenience. Homosassa Springs. Homosassa Springs operates in that same Citrus County cost structure, 8% below national average, FPLI of 91.52. But the differentiator is the mature senior care ecosystem. This town built itself around retiree needs before aging in place became a marketing buzzword. You've got multiple assisted living facilities with monthly costs from $2,200 to $6,200. Places like Royal Dalton House and Sugar Mill Manor are part of an established network. The local infrastructure, medical transport, specialized pharmacies, home health services, already exists and scales. Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park provides nature access without bushwhacking through palmetto scrub. Local spots like Dixie Harvest Produce keep the fresh food chain local and cheap. The housing follows that Citrus County pattern: older builds, ranch layouts, land attached. You're buying properties that have been here for decades, often from sellers downsizing or moving closer to family. Madison. Madison County represents the absolute floor on Florida living costs. The Florida Price Level Index scores 90.55, the lowest recorded in this analysis. You're living at costs that undercut 95% of the state. Land prices reflect that baseline. 1-acre wooded lots list for $15,000 total. Small parcels in the 0 to 2 acre range sell for $18,750 per acre. You can buy 5 acres for under $95,000 and still have budget left to build or renovate. The trade-off is obvious. You're in deep rural North Florida. Healthcare means driving to Tallahassee or Lake City for anything beyond primary care. Specialized services, emergency surgery, you're on the road for an hour or more. The nearest target might be 50 miles away, but if your priority is maximum space and minimum cost, Madison delivers. You get land, quiet, and the freedom to build exactly the retirement you want without asking permission. Lake Wales. Lake Wales occupies Polk County's Central Florida Ridge. Older ranch-style homes regularly list around $215,000. The ridge provides elevation, which in Florida means better drainage and slightly more varied terrain. You get modest hills, better sightlines, visual relief from the endless horizontal. You're close enough to Lakeland and Winter Haven that you're not isolated, but far enough out that you're not paying for proximity you don't need. Healthcare flows through the same regional networks as Bartow. The bigger advantage is access to both coasts and Orlando without living in any of them. Tampa's an hour west, Orlando's an hour northeast. You're positioned for occasional trips without the daily grind of metro living. That's valuable for retirees who still want options, concerts, airports, specialized shopping, without dealing with traffic and crowds. Arcadia. Arcadia sits in DeSoto County with a Florida Price Level Index of 94.04. The local economy still runs on ranching and agriculture. This isn't a place pretending to be rural, it's actually rural. Working ranches, cattle operations, agricultural suppliers. The strategic play is geography. Arcadia gives you inland affordability, the low FPLI, the space, the quiet, while maintaining relatively fast access to Southwest Florida's coast and the North Fort Myers area. You can drive to the coast for a day trip without it becoming an expedition. The housing stock skews toward older builds on larger lots. Expect properties that need some love but come with 3 to 5 acres. You're trading cosmetic updates for land equity. Quincy. Quincy operates in Gadsden County, which is about as deep North Florida as you can get without leaving the state. The cost structure mirrors neighboring Madison County, that same FPLI around 90.55, the same dirt cheap baseline. Property taxes reflect that, with one municipal taxing district running a millage of just 1.85. Healthcare is the limiting factor. TMH Physician Partners operates a primary care clinic focused on preventative services and chronic condition management. That covers your annual checkups, your blood pressure monitoring, your diabetes management, but anything serious, surgery, cardiac intervention, complex diagnostics, requires a trip to Tallahassee. The value proposition is straightforward: maximum savings in exchange for accepting distance. You're not paying for convenience here. You're paying for space and financial runway. If your health is stable, your needs are predictable, and you're comfortable with the idea of a 90-minute drive for specialized care, Quincy delivers. If those conditions don't apply, look elsewhere. The town itself maintains that small southern courthouse town feel. Slower pace, older architecture, the kind of place where change happens over decades, not years. That stability is either appealing or suffocating depending on your personality. No judgment either way, but know what you're signing up for. Newberry. Newberry is the outlier in this entire list. The median home price hits $609,124. housing costs run 17% above the national average. This is not cheap. This is not where you go to maximize your dollar. But here's what you're buying: immediate access to Gainesville. That means the University of Florida. That means UF Health, which is top-tier academic medical care. Cutting-edge research, clinical trials, specialists who literally write the textbooks. You're 20 minutes from one of the best hospital systems in the Southeast. You're also buying culture. Gainesville brings university events, concerts, lectures, museums, the kind of intellectual infrastructure that most small towns can't support. The local farmers market scene is active and well-established, pulling from the agricultural base that surrounds the university town. So the Newberry calculation is simple. Pay coastal prices to live on the rural fringe of a major medical and cultural hub. You get farmhouse aesthetics, you get acreage, you get that quiet life. But you're never more than 20 minutes from world-class healthcare and the full menu of urban amenities. For retirees who refuse to compromise on medical access or cultural engagement, Newberry justifies the cost. For everyone else, it's too expensive to make sense. Mascotte. Mascotte operates in Lake County, which positions it close to Central Florida's growth corridor and the big 55-plus communities that dominate the region. The median listing price runs between $377,450 and $389,950. Lake County's FPLI scores 96.60, which is higher than the deep rural counties but still below the state median. You're paying for location here. Mascotte gives you farmhouse potential. There are still rural pockets with acreage available, but you're buying into Central Florida's expansion zone. That means proximity to Orlando, fast access to the villages if you want to tap into their amenities, and connection to the entire infrastructure network that serves the region. This is the choice for retirees who want the farmhouse aesthetic but can't fully commit to isolation. You want land, you want space, you want that slower pace. But you also want to be 30 minutes from an airport, 20 minutes from a major hospital, and close enough to Orlando that your visiting family doesn't treat the trip like a safari expedition. The trade-off is cost. You're not getting deep rural prices. You're paying for access and optionality. That makes sense if you value those things. If you don't, if you're genuinely ready to disconnect and embrace the interior, there are cheaper options further north and further inland. Fort White. Fort White is another Columbia County town, which means it shares that FPLI of 94.51 and the general cost advantages of North Florida's interior. The municipal millage rate here runs 5.0, which is excellent. Low base rate, low total tax bill. The location skews toward river access and nature focus. You're not buying here for cultural amenities or shopping districts. You're buying for quiet, for water, for the kind of seclusion that's increasingly impossible to find anywhere near a major metro. Lake City's commercial centers are close enough for supply runs and medical needs, and you're pulling from the same regional hospital network that services the broader Columbia County area. That keeps you connected without forcing you to live in town or deal with even the modest density Lake City carries. The housing market reflects the low-cost baseline, but with slightly more emphasis on properties that incorporate river or water access into the value proposition. Expect older builds, minimal HOA interference, and the kind of neighbors who value privacy as much as you do. This is the choice for retirees who want genuine solitude without completely abandoning infrastructure. The coastal squeeze is real, but the Florida dream isn't dead. It just moved inland where most people aren't looking. These 15 towns prove you can still find space, affordability, and stability if you're willing to trade beach proximity for financial breathing room. The farmhouse life exists. It's just hiding 50 miles from where the real estate agents want you searching.